There is a forest in ancient India so deep and so quiet that even the gods stop to listen when the wind moves through it. Tonight, we walk into that forest with Rama and Sita and Lakshmana into 14 years of exile. And we begin at the very first step past the city gates. But before we begin, I want you to do something for me. Let your hands go still. Let your jaw soften. Let the sound of wherever you are fade just a little into the background. You don't need to sleep yet. You only need to listen. I have been sitting by this fire for a very long time, and tonight, I have a story that has been waiting patient as a river for exactly this moment, for exactly you. It begins in a city of gold, Ayodhya city, of no enemies, they called it, built along the banks of the river Sarayu, where the water runs wide and clear in the monsoon months, and turns amber as old honey in the dry season. A city where jasmine grew on every rooftop, where lamps burned in every window, where the sound of music drifted from the palace courtyards every evening, like smoke from incense. For years, Ayodhya had been waiting for a coronation. King Dasharatha, old now, slow of movement, silver-bearded, had finally decided the time had come. His eldest son, Rama, would be crowned king at dawn. The city had not slept that night. Children sat on their father's shoulders near the palace gates. Women oiled their hair and wore their best silks. Garlands of marigold and rose and champak were strung from window to window across the narrow lanes. The whole city smelled of sandalwood smoke and wet earth and happiness. And Rama in his chamber had sat in prayer since midnight. Calm, untroubled, the way a deep river is calm, even when wind crosses its surface. He did not know yet what was coming. None of them did. There is a room in every story where everything changes. In Ayodhya that night, that room belonged to Queen Kaikeyi. She was the youngest of King Dasharatha's 3 queens, and once, she had been the most beloved. She had ridden to war beside him in the days when he was young. She had saved his life when an arrow pierced his chariot wheel and the horses bolted. He had given her 2 boons, then 2 wishes to be claimed whenever she chose. She had never claimed them. Until tonight, a woman had come to her, Manthara, her hunchbacked maidservant, her childhood companion, and Manthara had spoken, quietly, carefully, the way a needle finds the only loose thread in a piece of cloth. If Rama is crowned tomorrow, Manthara had said, your son Bharata will spend his life in his elder brother's shadow. He will never be king. And you, Kaikeyi, you will be the queen of a man whose heir is not yours. Kaikeyi had wept at first, but tears, left to sit with an old wound, have a way of curdling into something harder. By the time King Dasharatha entered her chamber flushed with joy, already half celebrating, Kaikeyi was ready. She did not greet him. She sat on the floor of her private rooms, her silks disheveled, her ornaments removed, her hair unbound. A queen in formal grief, a posture so ancient and so precise that every king knew exactly what it meant. I am claiming my 2 boons, she said. Dasharatha went still. First boon, crown my son Bharata as king of Ayodhya. Second boon, send Rama to the forest for 14 years. The lamps in the palace corridor had not yet been lit for the morning. Rama walked in, near darkness. He had been told gently, by Vasishta his teacher, by his mother Kausalya with tears, she would not let fall what had happened. He had listened without speaking, without flinching. When it was over, he had simply said, my father's word is given. I will go. They tried to change his mind. Kausalya sat before him and said, abandon your father as he has abandoned you. Stay here. I am your mother. I command you. And Rama had bent to touch her feet and said quietly, a mother's grief is real. But Dharma is older than grief. Lakshmana, his younger brother, always fire where Rama was. Water had paced the room and raged. This is injustice. This is Manthara's poison. Ignore the order. Take the throne. I will stand beside you, and no one will dare. Brother, Rama had said, softly, just the one word. Lakshmana had gone quiet, and then Sita had come in, Sita, his wife, daughter of Janaka, king of Mithila, a woman who had lifted a bow that no other mortal man could move on the day she was a child playing in her father's garden. A woman who had grown up knowing that great things would ask great prices. She had already changed her clothes. She was wearing the rough woven cloth that forest hermits wear. She had braided her hair the way women do when they are leaving comfort behind. "You are not coming," Rama said. "I am already ready," Sita said. He gave her every argument. The forest was dangerous. The forest was cold in winter and burning in summer. There were demons, wild animals, no shelter. She would suffer. She listened to each argument carefully. Then she said, "A wife who stays behind while her husband walks into darkness has not fulfilled her dharma. She has only fulfilled her comfort. Where you walk, I walk. Where you sleep, I sleep. The forest will not be exile for me if you are in it." Rama looked at her for a long moment. He did not argue further. The city was awake when they left. Word had spread as word always does, in cities that love their prince, and the people of Ayodhya came out in their thousands. They lined the road from the palace to the river. Old men who had known Rama since he was small enough to sit in their laps, women who had watched him grow, children who had heard their parents speak of him the way one speaks of something rare and good. Nobody cheered. It was not a cheering moment. They walked in silence, Rama and Sita and Lakshmana in the white-gray light before sunrise. 3 people on foot, where there should have been a procession of elephants and gold. They had given away what they carried, their weapons only, and the clothes of forest dwellers. The river Sarayu was silver in the first light. The boatman who waited to carry them across, an old man named Guha, chieftain of the river tribes, stood at the water's edge with his eyes red from weeping. He said nothing. He held the boat steady. King Dasharatha had followed them to the river bank, old, broken, leaning on his minister. He called after Rama. He called after Sita. He walked into the shallows of the river. He could not stop weeping. Rama turned once. He looked at his father. He pressed his palms together in the last greeting. Then he stepped into the boat. The river carried them across. When they reached the other bank, Rama did not look back. You should know something about the forests of ancient India. They were not like any forest you have seen. They were older than the cities, older than the kingdoms, older than the roads that ran between them. They were forests that remembered the world before humans built anything. Forests where sages had lived for centuries, sitting still enough to let the vines grow over them. Forests where the deer walked without fear and the birds called at all hours, and the rivers ran cold and clear under canopies. So thick the sunlight fell in single shafts, like pillars of light in a temple. To walk into these forests was to walk backward in time. And so that first evening, their first evening in the wild, Rama and Sita and Lakshmana sat at the base of an old peepal tree at the edge of the river Tamasa and watched the forest go dark around them. Lakshmana built a small fire. He had been trained for this all. Princes of Ayodhya were trained to survive the wild, to track game and read weather and find clean water. But training is one thing. The first night is another. The sounds of the forest came in slowly. As the dark deepened, the long whistle of nightjars, the rustle of something large moving through leaves somewhere behind them, the creak of old wood, the settling calls of birds going to roost. Sita sat with her knees drawn up, listening. "Are you afraid?" Rama asked her, quietly. "No," she said. "Are you?" He thought about it honestly, the way only people who have never needed to pretend think about things. "Not afraid," he said at last. "Only aware of how large the world is." They were quiet for a while after that. The fire burned small and orange between them. The river made its soft sound. Somewhere far off, across the dark water, a lamp was lit in some village on the other bank, small and steady, like a star that had fallen into the human world and forgotten to rise again. They slept under the open sky that first night. No roof, no walls, nothing between them and the enormous Indian dark, but the tree overhead and the small fire's warmth and the sound of each other breathing. and the forest held them, quietly, without asking for anything. The days that followed had their own slow rhythm. They walked in the mornings, when the forest was cool, and the light came in green and gold through the trees. They rested at midday when the heat pressed down, and even the birds went quiet. They walked again in the late afternoon, when the shadows lengthened and the air tasted of coming evening. And at dusk, they found water, a stream, a river bend, a tank, and made their camp. Lakshmana was the practical one. He scouted ahead. He gathered fruit and roots and wild greens. He watched the sky for rain signs and the ground for tracks. He slept lightly, always with one ear open. Sita learned the forest the way she learned everything. By paying attention, she learned which berries were safe and which were bitter. She learned to read the light for direction. She learned the names of trees from the sages they met along the way, and there were many sages in these forests. Old men and women who had been living at the river crossings and forest clearings for so long, they had become part of the landscape, like the rocks and the roots.